Today we're going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to dive into a little bit of the behind the scenes. This is more of how we develop the software for diagnosing trucks. So what I have before me here on the table are various types of diagnostic adapters. You may be familiar with many of them. We have the DPA series, the DrewLink series, the Cummins inline, an older one, and a remote connect. This is done by Grandview. We also have a breakout box for OBD2 that allows us to plug the OBD2 in and then individually go to the different pins that are on the OBD2, and we can put them on a scope and see what's happening there and what information's going through. We also have a wireless Bluetooth 9-pin connector. We don't use that too much. That's put out by Nexic, and it pairs with an app on your cell phone. We have the manuals here. This here is a RP 1210 recommended practices. So RP stands for recommended practice, and 1210 is the number of the practice. And this refers to how these adapters communicate between the ECMs and the computer. So all of the commands and the instructions of how to use this documentation or how to use the RP 1210 is in this manual. So you have to buy this from the Truck Maintenance Council, and it gives all the information for that. Another form that we use quite often, here's another example, are SAE documents. And SAE documents can be quite expensive over time because they're $100 to $200 per document. And for example, J1939 is broken up into, I think it's something like 35 or 40 documents. So you're into $3,500 to $4,000, $5,000 just for the documentation. And here, for example, it's got A109 coolant pressure. It tells you how the coolant pressure is transmitted. It's one character. It's a unsigned short integer. It uses a bit resolution of 0.6 or 0.862 kilopascals per bit, or 125 or 0.125 pounds per square inch per bit. Shows you how the data is broken down here. And then you move into the next. So these are the different PIDs. This would be for J1708, but J1939 is similar. They use more or less a spreadsheet. And then we have here an Arduino. I don't know if you're familiar with them. Arduinos are little miniature computers. You can get them on Amazon or eBay. And these little computers, I'll just pull this one apart here, they pin together. And these little computers can be programmed with a interface on your computer, and you send the programming to these little devices, and you can use them for various things. And this adapter that goes on top is for CAN. So this would be your J1939, UDS, Worldwide Harmonized, OBD2, and all that sort of fun stuff can be done through here. These are the two connections for CAN high and CAN low. And these are indicator lights for transmit and receive and so on. So these are handy little tools that we use for developing software. Here's an example of one here. And we use these, let me just power it up. And as you can see, we have gauges and that sort of thing on this one. It's a touch screen. We can go through. Here are the CAN high and CAN low. It's not connected to anything right now. We can go through and we can simulate an engine with this. So we can use the different switches. So if we wanted to test our software to see if the park brake switch indicator works on the software, we can turn the park brake on and off using this device. It simulates being hooked up to a real truck. We can look at temperatures. We can look at pressures. Using a variable rheostat here, we can change the values. And we can look at simulations. For example, if we want to simulate a truck that's running overspeed, or if we want to simulate a truck that's overheating, we can make these simulations and use our software to read the information that's coming from them. So this little device here would mimic an ECM in a truck. So that's a very handy device, and we'll get into that a little bit more in a few minutes. We also use various jumper cables. Here's OBD2, and it's a Y cable, so we can plug into the ECM and then have two different devices hooked to it. You have seen our cables that we use on the ECMs. And for the 9-pin, we also have a splitter cable for 9 pins so that we can hook our adapter to the computer, as well as another device that we can use to monitor, or another ECM, whatever test we're doing. And this allows us to do a lot of the testing in the lab. That way we don't have to have a truck, we don't have to run fuel, and all that sort of thing. We do that later in the finalization stages, but during the initial development stages, we don't even hook to a truck. We use ECMs out of trucks. We use emulators, which is this. We also have purchased emulators. So here's an example of one here. So this emulator here will emulate VPW, which is Ford, PWM, GM, KWP, ISO 15765 11-bit and 29-bit, and J1939 and J1708. So this is a little truck emulator. You have 3 dials on this particular one: vehicle speed, engine RPM, and coolant temperature. Then you have a button to generate fault codes, and you have a selector switch to select which protocol that you want to use. So that's another handy tool that we use for development. So let's get over to the computer and have a look. Okay, so here we are at the computer, and this is the software for the Arduino emulator that I showed you a moment ago. And this particular emulator uses a CAN adapter, a CAN, what they call a hat. And this is the software that's publicly available. It's free to download from GitHub. And you use this along with a Nexic, which is that little touch screen, the little 3-inch touch screen that I used with the emulator. And here's where you would put in your information. So, for example, this is the code for converting CAN to J1939, transmit messages over the CAN channel, and receive messages over the CAN channel. These are all the commands that are available. And then you can go to the actual simulator here, and this is where you simulate trucks running or generate fault codes and that sort of thing. Here's one where we generate a VIN number, the software version number, the CVIN number, engine hours. So this is the software that goes into that little emulator, and it's simply a matter of hooking it up with a USB cable. When you get finished with your code, you just click the arrow, it uploads it to the little emulator, and your emulator now begins working with the new software. The touchscreen that goes with it is a Nextion. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. And this is an example of it. So you would have this screen programmed up, and the code is all in here. And it's more or less a drag and drop. You select photographs and controls, switches, buttons, and that sort of thing. You drop them on the screen where you want them, and then you configure them. So here is the screen that I showed you there, where we have the switches: park brake, simulator switch. Go back to the main. We have temperatures, So we have all the various temperature gauges that the truck would have. And we go back and we have pressures. You can have oil pressure, fuel pressure, EGR, crankcase. And go back to simulations, engine off, engine idle, overheat, cold start, overspeed, highway. That would be as if you're cruising down the highway. City, this would be driving through a city, so stopping and starting. Bad fuel, EGR stuck, regen, failed regen, won't regen. So these are simulations that are programmed in to make the emulator simulate an engine that is in this condition, whichever one you select. And then that way you can look at the software that you've developed and see that it's reading the proper values and getting the proper reactions. Then we get into the software itself. And this is a little section of the code for the PFD-Tool, where we're actually reading some of these parameters. In this case here, we're reading Cummins and breaking down the information. This would be the VIN number. So as the information comes back from that emulator or an ECM, it gets read in, and then the VIN number is presented as a parameter group, and it is recognized. It gets sent over here, and then it takes the byte information that came across on the CAN channel and converts it into readable characters, and then presents it to the end user. So that's pretty much it. That's how we develop our software. And once we get everything working in here and working with the emulators and the ECMs on the bench, then we go out and we test them on actual trucks and make sure everything's running properly and as smoothly as possible. Sometimes we'll develop something that needs a little bit of tweaking, and we get customer feedback. For example, they have to try 3 or 4 times to get a regen to actually start. So we'll ask for log files and we'll look at that to see where the breakdown in communication is. It might be a simple case of sending a keep alive message to the ECM periodically, or increasing the frequency of sending the keep alive messages. And that would allow the technician to take more time between setting up the computer, setting up the truck, and actually executing the command. So, for example, if the technician decided to take a little bit of a coffee break and then go back out and finish the command, if the computer was running all that time during the coffee break, the session may time out. And then he would have to start all over again, or she. And so we use what's called keep alive messages that would keep the channel open and active during pauses or long-term terms of inactivity. So that's pretty much the ins and outs of software development for PFD-Tool. I hope you've enjoyed this little brief look into the back room, or the hidden channels, or the hidden part of software development. And I hope you found it a little bit entertaining, gives you a little bit of an insight of what we go through to develop the software. So thank you for joining us, and don't forget to share and like, and give us a comment if you wish. We always like to hear from people, and I will catch you on the next one. Have a great day.